There's a moment in every manifestation journey that almost nobody talks about. The moment when a person realizes that the real obstacle isn't the universe, timing, luck, or even blockages. It's themselves. Not the conscious, motivated version repeating affirmations or visualizing every night, but the quiet identity underneath, the one running in the background like an old program. The part of you that keeps slipping back into the same emotional patterns, the same reactions, the same state. And this right here is the invisible mistake Neville Goddard was pointing to all along. It's unsettling when you finally recognize it. You tell yourself you're manifesting. You imagine the wish fulfilled. You feel it real, Neville Goddard style. You repeat the techniques, the affirmations, the intentions, and yet something inside you still whispers, nothing has changed. That whisper doesn't come from your desire. It comes from your state. Your thoughts say yes, but your identity says not yet. And that tiny contradiction sabotages more manifestations than any lack of effort ever could. What makes this mistake so dangerous is how invisible it is. It hides in your reactions, the way you tense up when you check your bank account, the small sting you feel when something doesn't go your way, the familiar heaviness that shows up before you even get out of bed. It hides in your assumptions, the quiet belief that things always take too long, that you're the exception, that nothing works for you the way it works for others. These subtle emotional reflexes reveal the state you're actually living from. And since imagination creates reality through identity, these reflexes matter more than every technique combined. But here's the plot twist. The moment you see the invisible mistake, everything begins to accelerate. Suddenly, the law of assumption explained in words becomes something you can feel working through you. You stop chasing signs and start embodying certainty. You shift your state Neville style instead of waiting for the outer world to justify your belief. And as your identity changes, your reactions change, your energy changes. Synchronicities begin to appear. You start experiencing tiny but undeniable confirmations that the inner shift is real. And that's where everything starts to break open. Because once the invisible mistake dissolves, manifestation stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like alignment. Most people think their biggest limitation is the money they don't have, the opportunities they weren't given, or the circumstances they're stuck in. But the real blockage, the one Neville Goddard pointed at again and again, is the invisible state a person slips back into without noticing. It's the old identity quietly tugging them back into familiar patterns. This is the birthplace of manifestation sabotage Neville warned us about, and it works so subtly that people mistake it for reality. It's almost funny how the mind hides this from us. Someone decides to practice the law of assumption, repeats imagination creates reality, and even tries feeling it real Neville Goddard style. But 5 minutes later, they're emotionally back to square one. Not because they're weak, but because the unconscious identity still runs the show. That identity is like an internal autopilot, dragging them into the same emotional reactions. And those reactions shape their state more than their affirmations do. A person can say, "I'm ready for abundance," yet deep down feel like the version of themselves who always struggles. That feeling, tiny, quiet, almost background noise, is the invisible mistake Neville Goddard spoke of. They think they're moving forward, but the identity they return to keeps them looping in circles. It's like trying to upgrade the software while the old system is still running underneath. No wonder results take so long to appear. There's a classic example. Someone visualizes a better job, imagines the salary, imagines the office, but whenever a bill arrives, their whole body reacts like the old self who believes money is scarce. That emotional return is what sabotages the wish-fulfilled alignment method. The person thinks they're applying the law, But in truth, they're oscillating between states, and reality responds to whichever state feels most familiar. Think of this invisible state like muscle memory. Even if a person learns a new way to walk, their body might try to revert to the old stride without conscious intention. The mind works the same way. It defaults to the emotional posture it knows best. That's why Neville insisted that living in the end isn't intellectual, it's identity-based. You shift your state Neville style by becoming aware of these subtle returns. Sometimes you can catch this invisible sabotage through small reactions. Frustration when something doesn't go your way. A sinking feeling after checking your bank app, or that old "here we go again" thought. These tiny emotional reflexes are proof that the former identity still has influence. And those reflexes hold more creative power than the person realizes. They're not failures, they're indicators showing exactly where the shift must happen. A mentor once told me, "Your outer problems are just souvenirs from your inner state." That hit me like a brick, because it explained why people repeat the same financial struggles, the same relationship patterns, the same emotional cycles. Not because they're cursed, but because they keep returning to the same inner home. The law of assumption explained this perfectly through states, not actions, decide outcomes. The crazy part is that this sabotage doesn't feel dramatic. It feels normal, comfortable, familiar. That's why it's invisible. People assume that if something is sabotaging their manifestation, it must be big, loud, or obvious. But most of the time, it's the old identity quietly whispering the same thoughts it whispered years ago, and the person believes it simply because it feels like them. Imagine trying to paint a new picture, but using brushes dipped in old colors. No matter how hard you try, the canvas keeps showing the past. That's what happens when someone tries to manifest with an unchanged identity. Their imagination moves forward, but their state stays anchored. And the law of assumption doesn't respond to desire, it responds to being. That's why correcting this inner identity becomes non-negotiable. What truly shifts everything is recognizing this invisible mistake for what it is. Not a flaw, not proof that manifestation doesn't work, but a sign that the inner identity needs updating. It's an invitation to look deeper, to become more aware of the emotional home a person unconsciously returns to. Neville Goddard used to say that a person can only experience what they are conscious of being, and this truth, once understood, explains almost every manifestation delay. People want abundance while feeling scarcity, want love while feeling unworthy, want confidence while walking around apologizing for existing. It's not intentional, it's the identity speaking louder than the desire. And when the two contradict, the desire simply has no space to land. It's like trying to plant seeds in concrete. This is why the law of assumption explained by Neville is never about forcing outcomes. It's about shifting the internal state first. Imagine someone wanting financial freedom while constantly feeling like money slips through their fingers. Even if they visualize, affirm, script, or use the feeling it real Neville Goddard technique, the state they dwell in most will always dominate. And that dominant state decides what 3D can reflect back. The contradiction becomes the invisible block. Think of it like energy interference on an old radio. You might tune into the frequency of your desire for a few minutes, but the moment you shift, the signal gets replaced by static from the old identity. That's what happens when the desire and the state don't match. The universe isn't ignoring you. Your state is simply broadcasting a different request, and reality obeys the stronger signal every time. It never fails. There's an everyday analogy I love. Imagine trying to act confident in a meeting while internally feeling like the same insecure teenager from years ago. No matter how polished your words sound, People can sense the misalignment. That's exactly how manifestation works. The desire says yes, but the state whispers, not yet. And the whisper shapes the outcome more than the shout ever could. Neville called this the root of manifestation sabotage. A classic example is relationships. Someone desires a loving connection, imagines being adored, and uses the wish-fulfilled alignment method. But deep inside, they're still conscious of being the person who was rejected in the past. That state colors every thought, reaction, and assumption. And since imagination creates reality through the lens of identity, the contradiction stops the experience from ever stabilizing in 3D, not out of punishment, but out of mismatch. This contradiction is subtle because it rarely shows up in thoughts. It shows up in reactions. A person says, "I know I'm chosen," but one unanswered message sends them straight back into fear. That emotional drop reveals the state they're truly living from. Neville taught that feeling is the secret because it reveals the truth, not because it forces anything. Feeling exposes whether you are conscious of being the version who has the desire or the version who hopes for it. If you've ever tried to manifest something and felt like it was almost there, but just wouldn't materialize, this is why. The contradiction between desire and state creates a delay. It's like having one foot in the new reality and one foot stuck in the old psychological story. Until the shift your state, Neville emphasizes, becomes consistent, the desire stays in limbo. Not lost, just unexpressed, waiting for alignment. People often say, "But I'm doing everything right," and they truly are. The techniques aren't the issue. It's the returning to the previous identity between the techniques that keeps the contradiction alive. Neville hinted that you don't manifest what you want. You manifest who you are conscious of being. So if the desire feels far away, it's because the state being embodied is far from it. This is not blame, it's clarity. The moment someone becomes conscious of this contradiction, everything starts changing. Awareness alone begins dissolving the invisible mistake Neville Goddard described. The person no longer tries to force the desire into existence, but begins shaping the state that allows it. They understand that alignment isn't a technique, it's a psychological shift. And once that inner shift starts taking root, desire naturally gains room to bloom. And this leads us to an even more subtle layer of the process. The hidden mistake that most people don't realize they're making, even when they think they're doing everything correctly. A mistake so quiet that it blends into the background of thought. There's a strange moment most people don't notice, the exact instant they imagine the end result, but still carry the emotional weight of their old self. It's almost comical how convincingly the mind says, "Yes, this is mine," while the body whispers, "Be realistic." That split is the invisible mistake Neville Goddard emphasized. The desire is clear, but the emotional atmosphere stays stuck in the familiar. And reality responds to the emotional truth, not the verbal declaration. It's like someone rehearsing confidence in the mirror and then walking into a room feeling like the same insecure version of themselves. The words were powerful, but the state didn't follow. And this is where manifestation sabotage Neville warned about happens silently. You can visualize the dream home, the financial breakthrough, the relationship. But if you feel from the state of waiting, hoping, trying, or doubting, the law of assumption explained becomes a theory instead of a lived reality. A person might imagine being wealthy, yet still flinch when checking their bank account. That flinch reveals the state. They may see themselves loved and chosen, yet feel a quiet fear every time the phone buzzes. That fear reveals the state. They may affirm abundance while carrying an inner dialogue of lack. Those inner responses matter more than the affirmations themselves. Feeling it real Neville Goddard style isn't about forcing an emotion. It's about noticing what your state is actually broadcasting. It's fascinating how humans try to trick their subconscious with positive thoughts while maintaining the emotional signature of the past. It's like trying to smell like roses while wearing the same old perfume every day. The scent of the state always wins. Neville understood this deeply, that imagination creates reality only when paired with the identity that matches the wish. Otherwise, the imagination becomes a fantasy instead of a seed. Imagine someone visualizing their ideal life as if watching a movie. Beautiful scenes, perfect outcomes, everything aligned. But once the visualization ends, they return mentally to being the person who doesn't have it yet. That return, that quiet, emotional drop, is the invisible mistake. It's subtle, barely noticeable, but powerful enough to stall any manifestation. Because the state contradicts the end, and contradiction kills momentum. This mistake isn't a failure, it's simply human habit. The old state feels like home, so it pulls you back effortlessly. Think of it like wearing an old pair of shoes. Even if they're worn, they're familiar. The new state feels strange at first, like wearing something fresh and stiff, but that discomfort is proof you're shifting your state Neville style. And comfort eventually comes with repetition, not with desire alone. Many people confuse imagining the end with living in the end. They think visualizing is enough, but if the emotional background is doubt or longing, the visualization becomes a momentary escape. Neville taught that the wish-fulfilled alignment method requires emotional consistency, not perfection. The question isn't, did I imagine it right? But who was I being while imagining it? This single distinction transforms everything. Sometimes the conflict shows up through impatience. A person imagines their desire, but then checks their 3D reality to see if it worked yet. That checking comes from the old state, the one that believes the desire is far away. And that belief delays everything. It's like planting a seed and digging it up every day to see if it sprouted. The act itself reveals the lack of trust in the new identity. Neville saw this as one of the clearest signs of internal contradiction. A mentor could watch someone for 5 minutes and tell which state they're in, not by their words but by the emotional tone beneath them. And once you become aware of your emotional tone, you start catching the invisible mistake in real time. That moment is powerful. It's the moment you stop being fooled by thoughts and start listening to the state beneath them. And that awareness prepares you for an even deeper realization coming next. Because the truth is simple. Reality isn't waiting for your words. It's responding to your being. Most people believe reality reacts to their desires, their prayers, their techniques, or the intensity of their wanting. But Neville Goddard dismantled that illusion completely. Reality isn't responding to what you want. It's responding to who you are being in every quiet moment of the day. That's why 2 people can want the same thing, but only one receives it. The difference isn't effort, it's state. The universe mirrors identity, not desire. A person may desperately want abundance, but if they're being someone who fears bills, obsesses over timing, or doubts every opportunity, the state is louder than the desire. That tiny doubt, almost imperceptible, becomes an anchor dragging them back into the undesired self. This is the very essence of manifestation sabotage Neville warned people about. The old state doesn't need a dramatic emotion to take over. A single moment of fear can reactivate it. It's like tuning a radio. Even the smallest twist of the dial shifts the frequency. You might still hear the music faintly, but there's static interfering with the signal. That static is doubt. And no matter how clearly you visualize or how passionately you affirm, the static distorts the outcome. This is why the law of assumption explained by Neville puts so much emphasis on inner being rather than outer effort. 1 second of doubt can do more damage than an hour of visualization can repair. Think of someone starting a new diet. They commit strongly, feel motivated and see progress. But one stressful moment leads them to say, "Oh, whatever, I'll eat this just once." That single choice pulls them back into the old pattern. States work the same way. A small moment of "I hope it happens" reveals they're not fully living in the end. And reality responds to that hope as lack, because hope only exists where the desire is still missing. A common example is checking for results. The moment someone looks at their bank account, their phone, their email, or their circumstances for signs, they're unconsciously admitting the desire isn't here yet. That tiny reaction betrays their state. Feeling it real Neville Goddard style means embodying the certainty internally without needing external proof. But the old self always seeks reassurance, and that seeking reactivates the undesired version. It's wild how often people pray for change while embodying the version of themselves who fears change won't come. The prayer is sincere, but the state is contradictory. And because imagination creates reality through identity, the contradiction slows everything down. It's not punishment, it's mechanical. The mirror can only reflect the face you present to it, not the face you wish you had. The law works with precision, not exceptions. Even the language people use reveals their state. Someone may say, "I want financial freedom," which sounds powerful, but wanting implies distance. A person living in the end feels gratitude, relief, or calm instead. The feelings are indicators of who they're being. That's why Neville's wish-fulfilled alignment method isn't about repeating something. It's about becoming the one who no longer needs the desire to prove itself. The feeling is the evidence. Have you ever noticed how people who truly expect something don't doubt it? If they order food, they expect it to arrive. If they set an appointment, they expect it to be honored. But when it comes to manifestations, they suddenly become uncertain. That uncertainty signals the old identity is still driving the emotional car. And until that changes, they will continue experiencing the same loops, no matter how strong the desire is. What's liberating is that even the smallest shift in identity creates a ripple effect. The moment you begin being the version who has the desire, even subtly, even quietly, reality adjusts. It may not be immediate, but it is inevitable. Because the law of assumption isn't mystical, it's structural. Your inner state is the blueprint, and the blueprint always becomes the building, even if the construction happens brick by brick. And once a person sees that reality mirrors their state, not their desire, something powerful happens. They stop begging for evidence and begin shaping the inner world instead. Which leads directly into the practice that makes this shift real, practical, and repeatable. Neville Goddard always hinted that the true power wasn't in the length of a session, but in the quality of the feeling. A person doesn't need an hour of meditation to shift their state. Sometimes all it takes is 10 seconds of genuine emotional alignment. The trick is to identify the emotional atmosphere of the desired identity: relief, gratitude, confidence, safety. Those emotions are the doorway. They carry the signature of the version who already has the desire. Most people make this practice harder than it needs to be. They think they must generate fireworks of emotion, as if manifesting required a Hollywood-level performance. But the law of assumption explained it simply. The feeling of naturalness is enough. If a person can sit quietly and feel a soft sense of "it's done," even for a moment, they've touched the wish-fulfilled alignment method. That brief emotional shift carries more power than hours of forced visualization. Think of it like stepping into a warm room after being outside in the cold. You don't need to stay there long for your body to recognize the new temperature. States work the same way. 10 to 15 seconds of genuine relief is often enough to begin rewiring the inner identity. And the more familiar that feeling becomes, the easier it is to return to it throughout the day. This is how you shift your state Neville style. Small, consistent emotional repetitions. A great practice is to pause during ordinary moments, washing dishes, waiting at a red light, brushing your teeth, and ask, how would the version of me who already has this feel right now? Not what they would do, not what they would think, but what they would feel. This question bypasses overthinking and lets the body answer. Feeling it real Neville Goddard style becomes natural when it's woven into daily life, not reserved for special rituals. These micro moments of alignment accumulate. Imagine someone aiming to manifest financial ease. Instead of forcing excitement or fantasizing about millions, they identify the emotion of relief, the quiet sense of I'm supported, I'm taken care of. Sitting in that feeling for a few seconds each day rewrites their internal narrative. It's subtle, almost too simple, but this simplicity is exactly why it works. The subconscious loves repetition, not intensity. A person might ask, but what if I don't feel anything? That's normal. The old state is more familiar, so the new one can feel distant at first. But the practice isn't about feeling fireworks, it's about introducing a new emotional temperature. Even imagining the possibility of relief is enough to begin dissolving the invisible mistake Neville Goddard warned about. The shift begins with willingness, and willingness becomes naturalness with practice. Sometimes the easiest way to access the new state is through memory. For example, thinking of a moment when you received good news, or when something unexpectedly worked out. Not to repeat the event, but to borrow the emotional tone. The subconscious doesn't care where the feeling comes from, only that you feel it. This is the secret shortcut to feeling it real. Use anything that evokes the atmosphere of the fulfilled desire. You can even treat this like a daily emotional check-in. Just ask, am I being the version who has it, or the version who is still waiting for it? This small question unveils the internal alignment instantly. And when the answer isn't aligned, there's no guilt, only opportunity. Because every misalignment is a chance to sit in the desired state for a few seconds and realign the blueprint that imagination creates reality from. Over time, these tiny practices begin to reshape the internal identity. The old emotional patterns soften. The nervous system stops reacting with fear or urgency. The new state starts feeling familiar. This feeling of naturalness tells you the shift is working. It's not a dramatic moment. It's a quiet settling. And once this happens, you begin to understand why Neville said feeling is the secret. It reveals when the inner shift has truly taken root. And as this emotional familiarity grows, something even more powerful begins to unfold. The feeling itself becomes the proof that the sabotage is ending and alignment is finally taking over. One of Neville Goddard's most underrated teachings is this: feeling never lies. Thoughts can convince you, affirmations can motivate you, imagination can inspire you, but the feeling reveals the truth of your state. When the new identity begins to feel natural, not forced or dramatic, that's the clearest sign the invisible sabotage has dissolved. You're no longer performing the new state, you're being it. And that difference is everything. Most people think the shift happens when the desire appears in 3D, but Neville said the shift happens long before that. It happens the moment the new feeling becomes more familiar than the old one. It's that subtle emotional click where you realize you're no longer begging for change, you're expecting it. You can almost sense that imagination creates reality not as a concept, but as your lived experience. And this expectation is effortless, not pushed. Think of it like learning to swim. At first, every movement feels unnatural, clumsy, uncertain. But suddenly, without knowing exactly when it happened, your body just gets it. You float, you move, you stop fighting the water. That's what living in the end feels like when the new state takes over. The emotional tension disappears. The wish-fulfilled alignment method becomes automatic, and the old identity no longer pulls you under. A great indicator of this shift is when you stop obsessively thinking about the desire, not because you gave up, but because it no longer feels missing. The state of having becomes natural. Someone trying to manifest money might stop checking their bank account compulsively. Someone seeking love might stop interpreting every text like a survival signal. The anxiety fades. The emotional landscape softens. This is alignment, the law of assumption explained through feeling. There's a commonly overlooked sign that the shift has begun. Impatience fades. A person no longer asks, "When will it show up?" because the inner state feels complete. Neville Goddard often said that once you feel the desire is real, the external world becomes almost irrelevant. You stop chasing signs because you are the sign. The state speaks louder than circumstances, and circumstances eventually surrender to that state. Another signal is emotional neutrality. Not excitement, not fear, neutrality. The desire feels normal. This neutrality isn't indifference, it's acceptance. It's the quiet knowing that the manifestation is done internally, so the outer world will follow. It's the subtle confidence people carry when they know something belongs to them. And this confidence is proof that the invisible mistake Neville warned about has finally loosened its grip. A personal analogy: imagine receiving a package you ordered online. You don't obsessively wonder if it's coming, you simply know it will arrive. You might not know the exact hour, but the assumption is settled. That's how the new state feels once the shift stabilizes. You don't wish, you assume, you don't try, you embody. The feeling of naturalness replaces the need for reassurance. This is the emotional signature of alignment. You'll notice the shift in small reactions. Something that used to trigger fear or disappointment now barely moves you. The old patterns lose their emotional charge. This is not suppression, it's transformation. When you feel stable internally, the world loses its power to shake you. And this emotional steadiness is the clearest proof that you've shifted your state Neville style. The inner identity has rewritten itself. The most beautiful part is that you don't need to declare the shift. You feel it. You wake up lighter. You breathe differently. Your assumptions change without effort. It's as if the new version of you steps forward and the old one gently fades into the background. This isn't a motivational high or temporary adrenaline. It's the deep, quiet truth of the new state becoming your emotional home. And once you reach this point, alignment is inevitable. And yet, even with this newfound stability, external contradictions may still appear. But now they serve a very specific purpose, one that pushes your transformation to the next level. One of the most misunderstood parts of Neville Goddard's teachings is the role of contradictions. People assume contradictions mean they're doing something wrong, when in reality, contradictions mean the inner shift has begun. The old state surfaces one last time, almost like a reflex, and the moment you see it, your reaction reveals everything. If you panic, you slip into the old identity. If you stay grounded, you confirm the new state. It's like the final echo of your past assumptions. Imagine shouting in a canyon. The voice that comes back isn't a new sound, but a reflection of what you already sent out. 3D works the same way. When you shift your state Neville style, the old echoes still return for a while. Bills show up, people react the same way, opportunities seem delayed. But none of these reflect the new identity. They reflect the old one dissolving. They're evidence of transition, not failure. Neville often reminded students, do not let the facts of today deny the truth of your assumption. This is where feeling it real Neville Goddard style becomes crucial. If your emotional center stays anchored in the new state, the contradiction loses its power. It becomes like watching a rerun of a show you've already outgrown. You recognize the storyline, but it no longer defines you. Think of a person who begins working out. In the first few weeks, they might feel tired, sore, or even weaker than before. That doesn't mean the body isn't changing. It means the body is adjusting. Manifestation works the same way. Contradictions aren't signs of failure. They're signs of adjustment. The law of assumption explained through experience shows that the body, mind, and circumstances need time to align with the new identity. A powerful example: someone manifests financial stability. They feel calmer, more confident, more anchored, and suddenly, an unexpected bill arrives. In the old state, they'd spiral into fear. In the new state, they simply breathe and continue assuming abundance. That reaction determines the outcome far more than the bill itself. The wish-fulfilled alignment method is maintained not by circumstances, but by your emotional stance when circumstances resist. These moments of contradiction are actually diagnostic tools. They show you exactly where the old identity still lingers. If something triggers you, it's not a sign the manifestation failed. It's a sign the old state is asking to be released. A wise person uses contradictions as mirrors. Ah, so this is where I still return to fear. And in that moment, they choose differently. They choose alignment. It's strangely empowering when you realize that the contradiction has no creative power of its own. Only your reaction does. A circumstance is neutral until you assign meaning to it. This is the essence of imagination creates reality. If you react from the old state, you reinforce it. If you respond from the new state, you dissolve the old identity instantly. That choice point is the doorway to transformation. Many people experience a test right before the manifestation materializes. It's not the universe testing them. It's the subconscious revealing the last remnants of the previous state. Think of it like sweeping a floor. The dust becomes visible right before it's cleared. Contradictions highlight what's being released, and once you see it that way, your patience deepens, your trust strengthens, your reactions become purposeful instead of emotional. The most magnetic people, the ones who manifest consistently, aren't the ones who never face contradictions. They're the ones who don't flinch when contradictions show up. They've mastered the art of remaining inwardly unmoved. They stay faithful to the new state even when 3D looks chaotic. And this inner steadiness is what collapses the old reality faster than any technique could. And once you begin responding instead of reacting, something remarkable happens. Early signs of inner shift begin to appear. Signs so subtle and encouraging that they let you know the invisible mistake is finally dissolving. One of the first signs that the invisible mistake Neville Goddard warned about is dissolving is the sudden calm that appears in situations where you used to panic. Nothing dramatic happens, you just don't react the same way anymore. Something that once triggered a spiral now barely moves your emotional needle. This isn't apathy, it's alignment. It's proof that your state is changing underneath the surface, even before results show up in 3D. You may notice that your mind stops running the old stories on autopilot. The constant worrying, the looping thoughts, the emotional spirals, they start fading. Not because you force them away, but because the new identity doesn't feed them. This is a key moment in the law of assumption, explained through experience. When your inner narrative changes effortlessly, you know the shift your state Neville teaches is taking hold. Another early sign is the strange feeling that everything will be fine, even when nothing external has changed. This quiet confidence is often mistaken for denial, but it's actually the wish-fulfilled alignment method settling into your nervous system. You don't need a reason to feel secure. The security comes from within. Feeling it real Neville Goddard style becomes natural when the emotional ground beneath you stabilizes. Synchronicities begin showing up too, small, unexpected alignments that reflect your inner shift. You overhear a conversation that mirrors your desire. You stumble upon an article or book that answers a question you didn't know how to ask. A chance encounter opens a door. These moments aren't random, they're reflections. They confirm that imagination creates reality and that your new assumptions are being echoed back to you. You may also notice a new ability to pause before reacting. Instead of jumping into fear or doubt, you take a breath and choose your response. This pause is powerful. It shows that you're no longer living from the old identity. The unconscious autopilot is turning off. And every time you choose calm over chaos, the invisible mistake weakens. The new state gains more authority inside you. Another sign is that your self-talk becomes kinder. You stop judging yourself harshly. You stop replaying failures in your mind. You stop assuming the worst. This internal gentleness is a symptom of alignment. Neville taught that the state of the wish fulfilled cannot coexist with self-criticism. When your inner voice softens, that's the new identity taking control, the one that trusts, not the one that fears. You might even feel a subtle sense of detachment from outcomes. Not apathy, but freedom. You're no longer gripping your manifestation with tension. You no longer need it to prove anything to you. This detachment is one of the clearest signs the sabotage is disappearing. The more natural the desire feels internally, the less you monitor externally. This is living in the end without effort. Another beautiful sign is emotional resilience. When something goes wrong, you recover faster. A setback doesn't ruin your whole day. A contradiction doesn't send you spiraling. This resilience indicates that your emotional home is shifting. The old state was fragile. The new one is grounded. And groundedness is the true indicator that alignment is unfolding within you. Sometimes the early sign is simply this. You start seeing opportunities where you used to see impossibilities. Your perception changes. You recognize potential in situations that once felt hopeless. This perceptual shift isn't random. It's your mind adjusting to the new identity. Neville Goddard said that when the state changes, everything you see changes, and that includes the meaning you assign to life. And once these signs begin appearing, something deeper becomes possible, a level of embodiment where you stop negotiating with appearances altogether. Where you hold your state regardless of circumstances, stepping fully into the version of you who already has what you desire. There's a turning point in Neville Goddard's teachings that only a few truly reach, the moment you stop arguing with what you see. Most people continue negotiating with 3D, begging it to change, waiting for signs, measuring their progress through circumstances. But deep embodiment means the opposite. It means you stay loyal to the new identity, even when reality is slow to catch up. You stop asking, "Where is it?" and start assuming, "It's done." Neville said, "Persist in the assumption, even if the whole world contradicts it." That line is the backbone of the law of assumption explained through practice. When you reach this level, appearances lose their authority. A lack of evidence doesn't disturb you. A delay doesn't discourage you. You no longer try to force reality into submission. You simply are the version of yourself who already has the desire, and being, not wanting, becomes your default. It feels like crossing an invisible threshold. You wake up one day and realize you're no longer impressed by the old circumstances. They look temporary, almost flimsy. It's like watching a movie set and suddenly noticing the props. You see the structure behind the illusion. This is what happens when imagination creates reality, becomes more than a concept. You trust the inner world more than the outer one, and that trust becomes unshakable. A powerful example is someone manifesting a relationship. The old version checks their phone constantly, looks for validation, overanalyzes silence. The embodied version no longer does that. Not because they don't care, but because they know their state already contains the outcome. That knowing creates emotional stability. The external silence no longer feels threatening. This is the wish-fulfilled alignment method in its purest form. In finances, deep embodiment shows up as the absence of panic. Bills arrive, and you don't spiral. Unexpected expenses show up, and you remain calm. You don't mistake temporary fluctuations for permanent truths. The old identity reacted with fear. The new identity responds with certainty. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard style, turns into effortless confidence. And that confidence is what shifts circumstances faster than any technique. One of the biggest signs of deep embodiment is that you stop needing reassurance. You no longer seek signs. You stop checking for evidence. You realize the need for proof only exists when you doubt the outcome. But once you shift your state Neville style, the desire feels internal, not external. You carry it like a quiet truth. And every day that you remain loyal to that truth, your identity strengthens. You also begin noticing that the old emotional triggers lose their grip. The things that used to unsettle you now barely register. This is spiritual maturity. You're not controlling your reactions through effort. Your reactions simply changed because the state changed. When Neville said feeling is the secret, this is what he meant. The feeling tells you when you've crossed from wanting into being. Another sign of deep embodiment is that your imagination becomes more vivid than your circumstances. The inner world feels more real than the outer. This doesn't mean delusion, it means alignment. You can feel the new identity more strongly than the old story. And because imagination creates reality, the outer world eventually reorganizes itself around this new inner blueprint. And perhaps the most profound sign of embodiment is peace. Not excitement, not longing, not urgency, peace. A steady, grounded peace that says, it's already mine. This peace is a magnet. It's the emotional frequency of the fulfilled desire. And once you reach it, the outer world has no choice but to conform, because the inner state is now your habitual home. And this brings us to the final and most important realization, that the invisible mistake sabotaging your manifestation has always been about one thing: living from the wrong state. And once you correct that, the outer world falls into place with surprising ease. At the end of all of Neville Goddard's teachings, everything comes back to one truth. Your state is the cause, not your effort, not your desire, not your methods, your being. The invisible mistake most people make is trying to manifest from the identity that lacks the very thing they want. It's like trying to write a new story while speaking in the language of the old one. The mismatch creates resistance, and that resistance becomes delay. Neville said, "You cannot serve two masters. You cannot be the version who has and the version who lacks at the same time." Yet this is where manifestation sabotage Neville spoke of quietly happens. People use the law of assumption explained in theory, but in practice they keep returning to the state of waiting, hoping, trying, or chasing, and the state of waiting can only create more waiting. The state of hoping can only create more hoping. The moment you correct the inner identity, everything outside begins shifting naturally, not by force, not by pressure, but by law. Imagination creates reality through the identity you consistently occupy. When you become the version who already has the desire, the outer world reorganizes itself obediently. It feels almost magical the first time you experience it, but it's not magic, it's mechanics. The blueprint changed, so the structure follows. Think of it like updating a GPS. If the coordinates stay the same, you'll always be routed back to the same destination, no matter how many side roads you take. The state is your psychological GPS. If you keep returning to the old coordinates, scarcity, insecurity, unworthiness, you'll keep ending up at the same outcomes. But once you shift your state Neville style, the destination changes instantly. And life begins moving you toward it effortlessly. One of the most liberating truths is that you don't need to fix the outer world. You don't need to make people behave differently. You don't need to control circumstances. And you don't need to chase after what's already yours. You fix the inner identity, and the world mirrors it. This is the heart of the wish-fulfilled alignment method. Being precedes having, feeling it real. Neville Goddard style precedes seeing it physically. When the new identity becomes your emotional home, the old state loses access to your reactions. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop arguing with doubt. You stop waiting for evidence. This emotional firmness is the moment sabotage ends. The invisible mistake dissolves the moment you refuse to return to the old identity, and reality feels this shift immediately, even if the effect takes time to appear externally. It's incredible how predictable the process becomes once you understand state-based creation. You realize that every delay, every pattern, every stuck moment was simply you living from the wrong identity. And this isn't a criticism, it's clarity. When Neville talked about living in the end, he was showing us how to bypass years of struggle by anchoring ourselves in the identity that already knows the outcome. That identity has no obstacles. Correcting the inner identity doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency, small emotional shifts, daily moments of alignment, choosing the new state again and again until it becomes familiar. It's a gentle process, not a dramatic one, and with each return to the new identity, you move further away from the invisible mistake Neville Goddard spent his life explaining. The mistake wasn't in your desire, it was in your being. Once the identity shifts, something remarkable happens. The world stops feeling like a problem to solve and starts feeling like a reflection you can trust. Life becomes cooperative. Opportunities find you. Synchronicities increase. People respond differently. The outer world stops resisting because it's no longer matching an inner conflict. When the state is unified, the world behaves accordingly. This is alignment at its purest. And as this sinks in, it becomes clear why the inner correction is everything, why Neville placed so much emphasis on feeling, identity, and assumption. Because once the inner state is corrected, the manifestation is inevitable. The outer world has no choice but to obey. If there's one thing this journey reveals, it's that your outer world has never been the true obstacle. Your inner identity has. And now that you understand the invisible mistake Neville Goddard talked about, the question becomes simple. Who are you choosing to be from this moment on? Not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, not when a sign appears, but right now, because your state is the starting point of every experience you will ever create. So pause and ask yourself, Are you still being the version who waits, doubts, and negotiates with reality? Or are you ready to embody the version who already has the wish fulfilled? What emotions would that version feel? What assumptions would they carry? What would they stop reacting to? Everything you want is waiting for the identity that matches it. The sooner you step into that state, even quietly, even imperfectly, the sooner your outer world will follow, and it will follow. It has no choice. If this video opened your eyes, shifted something inside you, or made you rethink how you've been using the law, then stay with this journey. There's so much more for you to unlock. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every new video will take you deeper into the mechanics of manifestation, identity, and the unseen powers shaping your reality.